About a week has passed since the day we went to the cemetery for an argument at night, and the hand did not go away as if it even started to fester. Damn it, I thought. William then pulled me over that fence to jump over. A week earlier, our company of students, out of idleness, decided to argue. They argued that the winner would be taken to the bar for free all month. The terms of the dispute were as follows. At night, it was necessary to go to the cemetery, find the largest bouquet of artificial flowers, take it from the grave, and bring it to the show. The one whose bouquet is bigger wins. The largest bouquet was agreed upon specifically so that someone would not grab the bouquet from the very edge of the cemetery, namely wander among the graves. That's what they decided on. Ethan was afraid at first. When they approached the cemetery, he fell into the darkness, even though his eyes were searching. In general, he gave up the prank altogether, saying that he could buy himself a beer at the bar for the evening. "A coward," William said of Oscar. "It's about the beer, isn't it? It's about the character," he concluded, clenching his fist as if to show what strength is. "Well, you." William was offended and left the cemetery smiling smugly. Oscar looked around at the three remaining boys. "Driven," they answered in unison and turned to face the cemetery, agreeing in advance on the meeting place in an hour. Everyone went their own way. After a couple of minutes, they lost sight of each other. I walked carefully, constantly looking around. The atmosphere of the cemetery affected the nerves. In the light of the moon, the eyes in the photographs sank into the shadows, which gave the impression that instead of them, there were empty black eye sockets. Goosebumps ran down my back. I wanted to turn around and go back, but I didn't want to be known as a coward at all. He walked forward cautiously, trying to see the flowers on the graves. The stipulated time was coming to an end, and there was still no big bouquet. After walking a little more, I stopped and began to spin around me, trying to consider at least something worthy of attention. Suddenly, something caught my eye. Looking closely, I saw a grave covered with wreaths and bouquets. Several fences separated me from her. Deciding not to waste time, he climbed right through them. Climbing over the fence, he fell right on the grave. A sharp pain pierced the palm. Covering my mouth to keep from screaming, I stood up and looked at my hand. The scale of the tragedy was hard to see in the dark, but the huge bouquet of artificial flowers sticking out of the grave was clearly visible. He held a bouquet in his hand and went back. The winner was Oscar. Some bandit stole a rather large bouquet. "The monument was huge there, and I didn't even pay attention," he said. I came home, standing in the bathroom and in the bright light, looking at the cut hand. I realized that I was badly injured. The palm throbbed. I need to be stitched up to the hospital, I thought, but for some reason gave up on this idea. "Okay, it will heal before the wedding," he said aloud. But sitting at the desk and examining the wound under the lamp, I realized that it was still necessary to sew it up. I didn't sleep well that night. In some nightmare, a terribly thin and pale girl reached out to me. Woke up in a cold sweat. Standing in front of the bathroom mirror, I looked at the dark circles under my eyes. After washing himself with cold water, he again raised his face to the mirror and sharply jumped away from it. In the print behind me stood someone terribly thin with black sunken eye sockets. He turned sharply from fear, but there was no one behind him. Once again sprinkled his face with ice water. "It's time to go to study." In general, the day went well. I even managed to close some tails in terms of education. Only this fatigue piled up more and more. I didn't want anything. Even today's trip with friends to a bar was rejected. Oscar slapped me on the shoulder. "I don't recognize you. Come to think of it, I'm tired. Now a couple of bottles of beer and you're as good as new." "No, guys, I really don't want to. I don't feel very well, and my hand is constantly twitching," I answered. Sergei waved his hand. "Well, how do you know?" Entering my entrance and going upstairs, I stopped. He was looking at the mat in front of the door of his apartment. There was dirt on it. Not the dry sand that people bring on the soles of their shoes, but real earth. Taking the rug with 2 fingers, I shook the ground onto the flight of stairs. He inserted the key into the keyhole and opened the door. A terrible stench hit my nose, as if a rotten piece of meat was lying on a shoe shelf. Struggling with the gag reflex, He walked around the apartment and opened all the windows. But he never found the source of the smell. I even wondered if my neighbor Grandma Emma, whom I hadn't seen for several days, had died. I pressed the call button, and my fears turned out to be in vain. The door opened, and a smiling old woman appeared on the threshold. "Oh, Felix," she happily greeted me. "What do you want?" "Just to visit. I haven't seen you for a long time. Maybe you need some help?" "No, everything seems to be normal," she answered, but strangely stretched her neck, as if wanting to look behind me. After a short conversation, I returned to myself. This time I fell asleep quickly, only to be visited again by the nightmare. Thin, pale hands reached out to me from the darkness. Woke up from the fact that something pushed me in my sleep. He lay and listened. There was silence in the apartment. I looked at the clock. 3 a.m. Suddenly I felt as if someone was lying on the bed next to me. The blanket tightened and I flicked the switch sharply. The room was empty, but on the bed on the side where I thought someone had lain, there was black dirt. He touched it with his hand. It was cold and wet. A chill ran down my spine and I became unbearably bored. The wound on his hand became painful again. The morning started with a doorbell. Getting out of bed, I sighed heavily, as if I had lost all my strength overnight. My friend, Alex, was standing at the door. "What's wrong with you, boy? Yesterday you didn't go with us. Today you don't get in touch." "I hung up the whole phone and you're not a subscriber," Alex said sleepily. "Go through," I said, letting him go. "What's wrong with you? Someone died? Haven't you checked your fridge in a while?" He grimaced. And then I noticed that the apartment stinks again. "Probably something with the riser," suggested Alex. "You should contact Zek," I smiled. The day the boys were going to go out of town was great. The sun was warm, there was almost no wind, and the forecasters did not report rain either. We left the city, found a good place near the river with gentle banks. After choosing a place, they stopped and set up a barbecue. Felix, now it's me, even forgot about his adventure. I walked along the edge of the bank. The grass rustled under my feet, but my soul was heavy. I suddenly felt so sorry for myself that I decided to go back to the boys. But before reaching the camp, he saw an old woman standing by the grave. "Hello?" I said quietly. "Hello," she answered, looking at me. "Did you Olivia come to visit?" she asked. "Yes," I answered, not knowing what to say. Sat next to her and she told me about her daughter Olivia who hanged herself. This conversation touched me to the core. Returning home, I realized why I wanted to kill myself. After returning home, I decided to visit Grandma Emma. She opened the door and smiled. "Well, what will you do, Felix?" I told her everything I learned at the cemetery. Grandma Emma frowned. "Listen to me carefully. You have to go to the cemetery at night. I won't go with you, but you can't go alone either. It's such a thing that if a girl takes offense at you, she can scare you to death. You can buy flowers alive, take a bigger bouquet. When you approach the grave, you will say, 'Forgive and let go.' Flowers are like a carpet spread out the land. And then you say, 'Forgive and let go,' and leave without looking back. In the morning, when you wake up, you will come to me." Alex came closer to the evening. He had already talked with Serhi, and he told him vividly about the night event with the window. I told Alex about today and the conversation with Grandma Emma. "Sure, I'll come with you. Time to end this prank," he replied. The night was dark and quiet. We went to the cemetery carrying a huge bouquet of white flowers. Goosebumps ran up my spine, but I didn't allow myself to think. Approaching the right grave, I felt the tension rise. He jumped over the fence and stopped in front of the grave. Nothing seemed to have happened, but suddenly an unbearable grave cold began to blow. Steam came out of the mouth. I repeated the words once more, and suddenly the image of a girl began to gather in front of me. Everything inside shook from fear. Finding strength in myself, I said the words for the third time. In front of me hung the silhouette of a thin girl with empty black eye sockets. Gathering my spirit, I got down on one knee and began to lay flowers on the grave. Having finished, he got up and said, "Forgive and let go." Suddenly, the ghostly image of the girl began to dissolve in the air. As if drop by drop, it disappeared, and it became easier for me to breathe. Alex and I quickly left the cemetery without looking back. In the morning, I went to Grandma Emma again. She listened attentively to my story and sighed with relief. Well, everything should be fine now. But don't forget, Vadyusha, to visit the cemetery and bring her flowers. This is a lesson for you for life. Do you see what your innocent prank has led to? You can't joke with such things. Since then, every year on the anniversary of Olivia's death, I went to the cemetery and brought a huge bouquet of white flowers to her grave. Life gradually returned to normal. The arm healed, and the nightmares no longer bothered me. But this incident left a deep mark in my heart. I realized that you can't joke with something that is beyond our understanding. Now I pay more attention to such things and always remember that terrible week that changed my life forever. It has been several years since I experienced those terrible events. My life changed. I graduated from university, found a job, and made new friends. But every time the anniversary of Marina's death approached, I felt special sadness and anxiety. One day, on my way home from work, I saw an unfamiliar figure at my door. When he got closer, he realized that it was Grandma Emma. She looked tired, but she was smiling when she saw me. "Felix, how are you?" she asked. "Okay, Grandma Emma, thank you for coming. What brings you here?" I asked. "Just wanted to see you and make sure you're okay, but there's something else I want to talk about." Grandma Emma said that she learned about another similar story that happened to another boy in our town. She asked me to help him, just as she had helped me. I agreed without hesitation because I understood that it was my duty. We met that guy. His name was James. He told me his story, and I saw that his situation was very similar to mine. Grandma Emma and I performed a ritual similar to the one I did before. James was scared, but determined. The ritual was successful. James felt the relief that I once felt too. He and I became friends, and I was glad that I was able to help someone else avoid a terrible fate. Baba Masha left me with a lot of wisdom and knowledge about how to deal with things that we don't always understand. She taught me that our lives are not just a series of random events, but also our actions and choices we make every day. Now I live peacefully, but I always remember the lessons I received from Grandma Emma. I am grateful to her for her help and support, for teaching me to be careful and attentive. Every time I visit Olivia's grave, I remember those events and thank fate for giving me a second chance. A few more years passed. I have already grown up completely, created a family, and our life flowed in its calm rhythm. But from time to time, I remembered those events, and I always felt grateful that everything ended well. One day, while walking in the park with my wife and child, I saw a familiar face. It was Oscar, the same friend with whom we went to the cemetery then. He approached us and we talked. It turned out that he also remembers that incident and occasionally visits Olivia's grave. We decided to visit Olivia's grave together and honor her memory. When we arrived at the cemetery, we saw that the grave was well kept, and the flowers that I bring every year are still there. We prayed and remembered those events that changed our lives. After visiting the grave, we felt a special sense of peace. We realized that the past left its traces, but we were able to overcome all difficulties and become stronger. We returned to our families feeling that we had done everything right. Those events taught us a lot. We became more attentive to our actions and words, began to appreciate life more and every moment spent with loved ones. I will always be grateful to Grandma Emma for her wisdom and help. Her lessons will stay with me forever. Now my children are growing up and already hear stories from me about those distant events. I tell them so that they know that life sometimes presents us with challenges, but we can always overcome them if we act wisely and responsibly. Thank you for attention. If you have more stories or questions, please contact me. Link to the site. One evening, when I was sitting at home with my family, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, I saw a middle-aged man with a tired face. He introduced himself as Michael and said that Grandma Emma sent him to me. She told him that I could help with a case similar to the one that happened to me. Michael said that recently, strange things began to happen to him. Dreams, nightmares, the feeling of someone else's presence in his house. His situation reminded me of my own. I agreed to help him, and we went to Grandma Emma. Grandma Emma greeted us with warmth and care. She explained that Michael also fell victim to an otherworldly force due to carelessness. She detailed how to perform a ritual to free him from this influence. Michael and I listened carefully and prepared to take all the necessary steps. At night, Michael and I went to the cemetery. Grandma Emma stayed at home but gave us all the necessary instructions. We found the right grave and began to perform the ritual. Michael was scared but determined. He laid fresh flowers on the grave and repeated the words that Grandmother Emma had taught us. Suddenly, the silhouette of the creature that was bothering him appeared in front of us. Michael, gathering all his strength, said, "Forgive and let go." The silhouette slowly dissolved into the air and we felt relief. Michael was free from this otherworldly influence. We quickly left the cemetery without looking back. After returning home, we told Baba Masha about the success of the ritual. She was pleased and said that everything should be fine now. Michael and I became friends. He often came to visit me, and we shared our thoughts and experiences. This event strengthened our relationship, and we supported each other in all life's difficulties. Time passed, and life returned to its normality. Michael and I continued to live and rejoice every day, remembering what we had to go through. We were always grateful to Grandma Masha for her wisdom and help. One day we learned that Grandma Emma had died. It was a great loss for all of us. But her lessons and wisdom stayed with us. She taught us the importance of being attentive to what is beyond our understanding and the importance of supporting each other in difficult times. Michael and I often mentioned Grandma Emma and the help she gave us. We tried to live so that her wisdom would not be forgotten. Each of us kept gratitude and respect for this great woman in our hearts. Now I understand that life is not only the events that happen to us, but also how we react to them. Thanks to Grandma Emma and the trials we went through, I have become stronger and wiser. Life goes on, and I am ready to meet it with an open heart and soul. Thank you for attention. If you have more stories or questions, please contact me. Link to the site. Life became much brighter after all the trials. I learned to appreciate every moment and every person who enters my life. The wisdom I received from Grandma Emma became my life's foundation. Every time I face difficulties, I remember her words and realize that everything can be overcome. Grandma Emma's legacy was not limited to knowledge of the afterlife. She taught me humanity, kindness, and mutual support. Her example became a source of inspiration for me. I often share her wisdom with my children and friends so that they too can learn to be better people. Time moved relentlessly forward, and my life moved along with it. My family grew, the children became older and wiser. I felt that Baba Masha was still around. Her spirit continued to live in our hearts and actions. Those terrible nights when I was haunted by nightmares are a thing of the past. Instead of them, more light and hope appeared in my life. I found inner peace and harmony, realizing that true strength lies in kindness and love. Every year on the anniversary of Olivia's death, my friends and I get together and visit her grave. This has become our tradition, a symbol of memory and friendship that unites us. We bring flowers and share our thoughts and memories. This is the time when we feel a special connection with the past and the future. With each new day, I look forward with optimism and faith in the best. My journey has taught me that life is full of surprises and challenges, but it is in them that we find our true strength. I am ready for new challenges and gladly accept each new day. Life goes on, and I am sure that new adventures and discoveries await me.